What was your school's faculty secret? A shocking percentage of the senior class was sleeping with teachers. Very small school. Homeschooled? Alright buddy. You've eat your last whore. One of our male teachers took in a girl student from an abusive home and she lived with him for the rest of senior year with his wife. After she graduated, he divorced his wife and married the former student. They are still together to my knowledge. Also, this wasn't like a getting with the hot young teacher thing. He was a homely man in his 50s. He was later fired for a similar situation that happened years prior after the previous student came forward. Also, apparently our teachers had their own most likely list that featured gems like most likely to get a life sentence and most likely to fall for a Ponzi scheme. High school QB was sleeping with the football coach's wife for 2 years before the coach found out everyone else knew. Girl in my grade was doing extra credit every day with the new math teacher our whole junior and senior year. They married shortly after we graduated. No one was surprised. 8 years later they are still together. 2 male teachers ducked the married school psychologist. She remarried one of them after she left the school. At once, asking the important questions. Back in high school, we had a campus similar to a college campus. Instead of one large building, it was several buildings laid out. One building was dedicated to math, another for science, etc. Anyway, there were tunnels built underground that connected all the buildings that no one was allowed to use. Only faculty members knew where and how to access them. Evidently, they were built during the Cold War in case the United States was under attack. Art teacher's staff room always smelled like pot. They always denied smoking pot. They smoked a lot of pot. Spent most of high school wanting to become an art teacher because they sat around listening to The Cure and looking cool and indifferent. Their staff room was in a small dark building at the end of campus and looked really grunge. One time we were loudly talking outside their window, and an art teacher came out to tell us to move along because we were ruining their jam session. Our high school librarian and business teacher were in a same-sex relationship and lived together. Nobody cared. This was mid-1960s. Both male or both female? Female. We had a teacher who had posed for Playboy while in college. Made centerfold. Wasn't really widely known until one day someone had found her centerfold and taped it to one of those roll-down maps in classrooms. She rolled it down, burst into tears and ran out of the classroom. She was replaced the next day. 1. Freshman year math teacher, a woman, had 2 dads. I don't remember how it got brought up, but she told us and immediately regretted it. Us immature kids ended up making her quietly cry at her desk. She moved away soon after that. I felt bad the rest of the day even though I wasn't a part of it. 2. Senior year math teacher was a shitty teacher. Just didn't teach whatsoever. Sat at her desk all class and gave us crosswords. She had a good sense of humor though and was horsing around with a kid in class and punched him in the chest. The kid is a big dig and goes to tell administrators she punched him, so she got her stuff and left before he could. We just didn't have a teacher the rest of the day. She never came back to work after that. One of the teachers was there her first year out of college and was secretly dating a senior boy. Right after graduation they started dating publicly. 2 married teachers worked at the high school. The wife was hot and the dude looked like a ducking toad. The dude paid my 16-year friend $35 once a week to mow his lawn and duck the wife while he watched from the closet. It never came out. Eventually she divorced him and moved away. The English teacher and the social studies teacher had the hots for each other. The vice principal would sometimes get so wound up in his lectures about God and country he would start crying. The girls' gym teacher was gay. The PE head teacher used to scream at us about abstinence until he was red in the face and would have to excuse himself to calm down. Our principal would gather the seniors together and lecture them about going to uni. If you don't continue your education at university, you are a drain on society and might as well just die. One time he went so hard that he threw up. I live in a small town and any big secrets are usually spread like a wildfire. There used to be this 6th grade special ed teacher, we'll call him Mr. H, that looked super creepy. There would always be new rumors about him and all the girls stayed away from him and called him a pedo. But again they were rumors so none of them were confirmed. About 2 years later, I'm in junior high and I have forgotten about Mr. Capital H. It's the middle of winter and I have just arrived at the school and already something feels wrong. There were teachers whispering with folders held up to their mouths and everything. Nobody found out what happened until some kid overheard the conversation between 2 teachers. Turns out Mr. H had a string of touching underage girls and boys. Mr. H was promptly fired and they tried to arrest him but he fled the state and was never found again. Now, I'm in high school and the rumors are now flying with another 6th grade teacher. At the school my wife once taught at, the principal was very much of the mind that if you were a young female teacher, you were supposed to adore him at all times. She didn't really play that game. And so he kept writing her up for the smallest infractions. He was also very quick to remind the teachers that he knew people in the town, and was thus immune to all retribution. And then he was caught, quite literally, having an affair with the wife of someone who worked in central office. About 20 years later now, he's still managing the gas station that's right down the road from the school. Each year the school would take the year 7 students, first year of high school, on a ski trip. The year I went, me and my friend were put in a hotel room where our balcony directly overlooked the balcony of a teacher who I'll call Mr. C. One night me and my friend went out onto the balcony in the middle of the night and saw Mr. C and another teacher, who we'll call Miss J, full on making out in the room. Curtains were wide open. Lights were on. We could see everything. Of course the next morning at breakfast we told all the other students around, one of whom was dumb brave enough to ask Miss J how long her and Mr. C had been together. Both teachers denied it flatly. And when the trip was over we had an assembly where our head teacher asked us all to stop sharing the baseless rumors from the trip. Told us that Mr. C and Miss J were colleagues and nothing more. Fast forward 7 years, my year graduates so all students from that trip were no longer in the school. And the following term the school sent home a letter informing parents that Miss J will now be going as Mrs. C. We later found out the 2 teachers had gotten drunk and hooked up on the trip exactly as we'd expected. And later got married. A teacher and principal were in the closet making babies and I saw one of the babies and the baby looked at me. My photo teacher, who looked like Elvis, was banging a 17-year-old student. That wasn't a secret very long. Young Elvis or old Elvis? Think old Elvis impersonating young Elvis. Everyone thought the high school history teacher was gay. He was rarely ever seen with his wife and would bring other men to school events. Turns out, the men were actually pimps and he was busted in a motel sting for prostitution. Well, my math teacher had a secret. He had placed hidden cameras in the girls' locker rooms and bathrooms. It's not a secret anymore, so needless to say he's in prison now, haha. I went to a Catholic school despite not being Catholic. One of the religion teachers got married and had a kid 5 months later. After some math they fired her. A teacher at our high school was featured on America's Most Wanted. He was a cop that had sexually assaulted a woman during a traffic stop. He had gotten the job at our high school using his brother's identification. I was sitting at home watching the show and told my grandma he was a teacher at our school. She told me I was crazy. The next day we had an assembly and a note was sent home to the parents. This isn't actually a secret, but rather a rumor that went around school that was a secret for a while. But this year an art teacher at my school walked in one day very disoriented and red-eyed. He was pulled out by the vice principal and wasn't seen again for several months. During this time lots of rumors circulated that he came to school high and had weed in his car, and this went on for a while. We had a long-term sub and no one knew what was going on. Until one of my friends revealed to me that the gym teacher confirmed those rumors. Turns out, we were all wrong. Poor guy got into a car accident and got a concussion and came into school that day anyway. He spent months in the hospital recovering. That the reason that computer accounts and security in general at stuff was a mess was that the older guy intentionally complicated things for the sake of job security. And that complication could not save him when the cops found CP on his computer. So he was arrested and nobody knew how the system was set up. So they scrambled for years to keep things working. At one point all the seniors had permission to see not only their own individual files, but also all freshman files. The new IT people, several years after taking on this mess, didn't seem to know this was happening. The shop teacher was a raging alcoholic and the music teacher liked to grab girls by the boobies. No one cared. It was the 80s. As a girl who lived in the 80s, we cared. But no one in authority did. Will probably get buried, but a girl in my class. Her mum was the head teacher of quite a prestigious private school, our school, and her father was the English teacher. Her father had an emotional affair with a student a couple of years older than us. Was writing her love letters and keeping a diary. Student finally told someone what happened, and because nothing sexual had happened, he just lost his job and put himself into a mental health facility. They got divorced soon after. Girl went on to be head girl and head teacher left the position. My male and married HS history teacher was sleeping a student in my class. They got married right after she graduated and he secured his divorce. Wasn't even a secret, but I went to school in Middle Tennessee and in I think 2nd or 3rd grade I got a day off because the janitor held his family and they were afraid he was hiding in one of the schools. The running total of how many teachers the principal has slept with. I know of 7 teachers and a nurse. There are lonely others. Untouchable because he gets the numbers. But what a sleaze. Our gym teacher and secretary were having an affair with each other in my junior high. The worst part about this was they were both married to other faculty members. One of them was the principal and the other married to the football coach. Apparently they were both caught doing the grown up in a supply closet. While I don't exactly know what was happened because so much of it was hush hush, I do know that the secretary who was married to the principal and the gym teacher sleeping with her were terminated. Several years later I randomly see on Facebook that the principal ended up marrying the football coach. That there was a secret bunker under the school theater. The students didn't know how to get to it, but teachers could use it as a last resort for an emergency. Found this out 2 years after graduating. Teacher and principal got it on in her classroom. Both were married and had families. They both got divorced and ran away with each other. One of my football coaches was a porn star. Not actually having sex, but he was a ref in a boxing ring where the winner got to have sex. No one outside of the team talks about it, but we don't let him forget it. The university I went to had one of the best creative writing programs. A rumor I heard said that one of the poetry writing profs had sexual relations with a female student. Then he wrote a poem about a young girl giving him a BJ. I don't know the prof and I haven't read the poem. But for some reason this juicy gossip stuck in my head. Girls' basketball coach had been rumored for years to have been banging students. His son was a year younger than me. And was dating the captain of the girls' team. See where this is going. Yet, a few years after graduating, she tried to commit suicide. Her mother searched her room and found boxes of letters from her now fiancé's father proving a sexual relationship going back to when she was 15 or 16. The college prep lit teacher eventually published a book about a young student athlete who was seduced by her basketball coach. My 3rd grade teacher was trans and transitioned when I was in high school. Beforehand, she mercilessly bullied everyone for their identities and whatever it was they liked. For example, I liked writing stories about animals and was banned from doing so in her class. After, she was a genuinely nice person. Even as an asshole teenager I thought she should have come out sooner and stopped taking out her anger on everyone else earlier in life. We had a teacher who just vanished one day. Older man taught maths. And we were told he was seriously ill. We all believed that because he had had a heart attack at school in the past. Later we found out he'd been fired for possession of child pornography. Every student and teacher had personal storage on the network. And that was where he kept it. He was apparently only caught because another teacher caught him looking at it after school. The headmaster at my high school was having an affair with the head of history, while his wife was working there as the school nurse. The sixth form all knew because the history teacher wasn't discreet and he'd already had to move schools for doing this before. I think it took about 4 years for it to come out. His wife is still with him. But history teacher's husband, a divorce lawyer, really took her to the cleaners. Our trig teacher and the principal were secretly seeing each other. Both of them women. They were living together as roommates for the longest time. We all knew better. And we all loved them together. The principal was constantly being investigated for embezzlement and suspended from school. And covering for it with a list of reasons why she was in hospital. She seemed to have friends on the state education board. Because she basically ran our school into the ground and nothing ever happened to her. Did the same to the one before it, too. She apparently teaches education at uni now, like she knows sheet. She was at school so infrequently most of us couldn't recognize her.